go crazy with all this here, right? Like I move properties over here. I got layers over here. I accidentally delete libraries. Oh my God, things are just insanity. Not at all how I wanted things to be when I started off so idealistic in the beginning. What could I do? Very simply, I go back to where I was before over here to my workspace. And guess what? I still have Dave's Faves selected. So what I need to do is reset whatever workspace you have here. I like to think about this as the Mary Poppins effect, right? Where it puts all your toys, everything in its place, everything in place for everything in place for everything in its place, or something more articulate than that. So I click on that and then watch what happens. Everything goes exactly back to where it was. Awesome. Love that. Okay. Now let's do one other thing. I'm going to go over here to Window. And this time I'm going to bring up something called my control bar. So I click on that and you'll notice that this little guy now appears way up on top, that we did not have that before. So I say to myself like, okay, well, I just added on something really critical and I want that to be part of Dave's Faves. So what do? I go back over to here and then guess what I'm going to do? I have to say new workspace and then literally type it in again, exactly word for word. It's kind of like a save as, but you see a name already exists. Click OK to overwrite. If you can see that, right? So you can see, all right, good. So it recognized that. That's exactly what I want. And then it overrides it. So then if I'm going to do any kind of reset or something like that, then it's going to always remember that I have this new option there as well. All right. So please pause the video, get your workspace all set up. Again, go to Essentials at first, reset Essentials, and then try to have yours look like mine as much as possible. All right, and then when we come back, we're going to do a little bit more overview of what's what on the screen, and then very soon you'll be illustrating in no time. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had some good luck and experience working with your new workspace, and yours looks like mine. So let's get a little deeper into what some of these panels do and how they can make our lives easier and more creative. So let's start off over here on the left-hand side where we have our Tools panel. And you'll notice here our Tools panel has a number of different individual icons that accomplish a number of different things, right? Just think about the Tools panel as like a toolbox. Each tool has its own different purpose. So if you're going to hammer something, but then when you're done hammering, you put it back and you grab the screwdriver. So each of these little individual icons have a different purpose, and then therefore you have to change when you want to change something else. So let's just start off over here. You'll see this is the Move tool. This is our Direct Selection tool. Notice you get a little tool tip for each of these. That's great. Some things you might recognize like the Rectangle tool, right? And just all these things you can move your mouse over and you can see exactly what they do. You'll also notice that when you move your mouse over it, they all have little letters next to them. These are the keyboard shortcut that you use in order to access them. So for example, this is V. So if I literally just type V, not Control V, not Command V, notice that will access the Move tool. If I hit A, which is right next to it, that selects the Direct Selection tool. If I hit T, guess where that's going to take me? It's going to take me to the Type tool. So you'll want to start to kind of memorize these things as you go along. Okay, so very important. Now over here on the bottom, you're going to see there's some other options for color. We're going to get into those in a lot more detail later on. Now, one of the more important panels that you have in Illustrator is the Properties panel. Okay, so coming all the way over here, okay, this is invaluable. And this is going to come up in so many different capacities depending on what you're doing. So for an example, like I'm doing nothing right now, and I have properties of my entire document. Like what's happening here? Really? Wow, so this is actually telling me a whole bunch of different things. What's my unit of measure right now? Okay, that's cool. Okay, what artboard am I working with here? I can go from these 3 different artboards I have here. We'll talk about artboards in more detail later on. I can very easily add on rulers and grids just by simply clicking, and then look at that. My ruler now just appeared, and now I'll be able to see, oh, well, you know what? I don't really want to work in these units of measure, so I can go ahead and go over here to inches. Notice how that changes. Let's change this to pixels. Okay, great, fantastic. So now I'm able to see how I can work with my Properties panel on a much larger scale. And as we go through the program, as we go through more exercises, we'll be coming back to this within this perspective. Now, let's just say, for example, I'm working on this bottle. Notice when I click on the bottle, my properties panel now changes. Okay, it is based on the context of what you click on, then your properties panel will change based off of the context of what you've actually clicked on. Okay, now if I double click on this, you'll see I'm now inside of this bottle, and you'll start to see even more stuff within this object that I can see the properties of, like the color of it, if there's a stroke, if there's any opacity, all this kind of stuff out here. I'm going to double click in this white area again, and now I'm back to my main canvas. All right, so the properties panel is incredibly valuable. You'll also see that I have 3 layers here. Let me go ahead and click on my little eyeball there. Like, okay, that makes my avocado go away. That makes my bottle go away, and this makes my pepper go away, okay? And we're going to, again, do a lot more on these individual ones, all right? As we go through the program, we're going to be exploring all these individual panels in much larger degree, okay? Now, another thing we'll want to understand here is our what we called earlier our control. Remember, this is the control. We brought that in last minute in the last exercise. And you're going to see the control overlaps a little bit with what we see over here in our properties panel. So let me go ahead and go to my avocado. I'm going to double click on that to get into my green. And then notice it shows me this green fill color. And it also gives me some other options for making my stroke a certain size, just essentially stroke as your outline. And then you can do all kinds of other things with the stroke style and blah, 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 alignment, etc. But notice how there's some overlap. Some people like to work with our control panel. Some people like to work with our properties panel. All right, totally up to you. I just want you to know that both of those options are there for you. All right. Now, some other basic interface things is we want to understand how we can zoom in and zoom out. Now, I like to use the keyboard shortcut, but I do want you to notice that way down below here, you're going to see is the option of how I'm zoomed in currently. Okay, that's great. So you can see, fantastic. I can zoom in this way to go in, let's just say 300. Like, oh man, okay, where am I now? I don't even really know. So let me just come right back to where I was before. That was a little bit disorienting. And I come right back to that. That's why I like to either use the keyboard shortcut or a combination of my mouse and keyboard shortcut. So if I use the keyboard shortcut of just Control or Command plus plus, that allows me to go in, and then minus minus allows me to go out. But if you hold down the Alt or Option key and you have a little mouse wheel, or even your trackpad, you can zoom in exactly where you want. So I'm going to come right to the center of the avocado pit. I like how much I'm going. I'm like 200, 400, 800% in there, right? Amazing. So I have that. I'm all set up, ready to go. All right. So use all these different, tools that whatever you find, comfortable for you. All right. Now you'll also notice to the right of this, right, way down again on the bottom, you can see here this says selection. What does that mean? Okay. It means whatever kind of tool you're working with, it's going to show you what tool you're in. So I changed that. Now I'm in the selection tool, direct selection tool, click on that. So that's kind of nice. So you kind of know, like, what am I looking at again? In case you kind of forget, or maybe you're working on 2 monitors, something like that. You can always look down there to see where you're at. And then you'll see down here, you will see all my different artboards as well. So we're going to be talking about artboards, but you can see avocado, bottle, and pepper. 1, 2, 3. Those are my 3 different artboards that I'm currently working with. Just think about them as pages, but we're going to be talking about artboards in a very large degree momentarily. All right. So this will get you going for some just like basic things in terms of our zooming, in terms of our moving in with our artboards, etc. I'm going to show you one last thing. As you're moving in, let me just move in real close. One really critical keyboard shortcut, I'm going to go ahead and type this out for you here, is to simply just hold down the space bar, and then you're going to click and drag, right, as you do that. Why? That essentially allows you to pan across the canvas, right? So watch as I do that. If I hold down the space bar, notice how my hand now appears, and I click and drag, still holding down to the space bar. I let go, and it takes me back to the tool that I was just in. Okay, see that? Hold on the space bar, temporary access to this little hand tool, or I like to call it the pan tool. And you can see I can go this way. Notice I can go in a very, very non-linear way to go wherever I want. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is how we get out of this. How do we get out of this to go back to our basically like our main sort of best fit window? And that is going to be Control plus 0. Think about that as like ground zero. Okay, if you're on the Mac, that's going to be Command plus 0. So what does that look like? Let me just try that. So Control plus 0, and look at that. I'm now best fit on the current artboard that I'm in right now. Okay, so watch as I zoom in again. Control or Command 0 takes me right back. All right, so you're going to want to write a few of these ones down. Some of these keyboard shortcuts you may have seen over here that are going to be very valuable for you. How to actually zoom in, how to zoom out, how to pan, and also how to come right back to a best fit. Because these things are going to serve you immeasurably as you get more and more. Star tool. Watch what happens now when
দাগ ও মলিনতা দূর করে দেয় 40% বেশি উজ্জ্বলতা নতুন গ্লো এন্ড লাভলি সিরাম ক্রিম It's like wow yeah future looks like
Now, we just talked about the scaling tool. Within this same little family is also the rotate tool. And we've seen how we can rotate very easily just by simply clicking on it. And I can come to my corners here and I can rotate this. I'd like to explain something very, like create the shape of the element that essentially I'm going to sort of, keep. Now, at this point, we have talked about point. Now, for some of you who don't, so what we're going to do in this lesson is learn about type on a path. So right now you see that Bilbo watches you as you sleep is inside of this circle. Okay, do you see that? And this circle is a path. But what you don't know is that there's an actual official path that is inside of the circle that you can't see, but the type conforms to that path. Now remember what a path is. A path is pretty much just like any vector shape that you can kind of go around, right? So it could be just a simple line. It could be a triangle. It could be a circle like this. It could be anything. Like we could even do one around Bilbo's ears if we want to, around a mountaintop. Okay, so you can do it along his whiskers if you like. This is the path that we might be typing around. Okay, so how do we actually do that? I'm going to just blot this out and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to call this type on a path. Great, fantastic. I'm there. I'm good to go. And I'm going to draw out a circle that's just going to be a path. That's just going to be right in the middle here and then come out. And then I'm going to type along that path. All right, so let's just choose our circle. I'm going to make it so I have no fill and a black stroke. Very good. And then my stroke doesn't even need to be that thick. No problem, but of course it's not going to matter in a little bit. And then I'm going to just draw out from the center, and you may actually use a guide to do this. Maybe that's something you wanted to do ahead of time, totally up to you, but I'm just going to just eyeball it for right now and just draw out my circle concentrically. We've done this in a few other exercises by holding down Shift and Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and then notice that it's coming in, nice little circle there. I'll just bump that up a tiny bit, okay? Love that. And then maybe I'll just bring that tiny bit smaller, make some room for my type. And then, great, good to go. Now let's actually do some typing along that path. So how do I do that? I'm going to go over here to my type tool, but I'm going to right click this time. You'll notice here is this type on a path tool. All right, very good. And watch what happens now when I simply move my mouse right over that line. I'm going to get this I bar with a little wavy doodad right there. Okay, I click on that and you'll see, pretty cool, but okay, brought in all that placeholder text, which is no problem because I wanted to see how big it was anyway. So then I can just take a look at that font. Okay, great, no problem. And now I can just simply type right over this. So Bilbo watches you as you sleep. Look at that. Look how cool it is, how it's conforming to my circle, right? The circle that I just drew. And then notice I can still select my text like I normally would with anything else. And then I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, which is just Control Shift and then it's the period. And if you're on the Mac, it's Command Shift and the period. Or, of course, you can go up to here to do that. All right, and then maybe I want to change this to a different font altogether. All right, and then I'll make that nice and big. Okay, pretty cool. All right, now, this obviously is not how I want it. So I can use some of my tools like my tracking to make it spread out a little bit further. So let's do that. Let's get a little review on how we do that. So let's go over here to Window, Type, and I'll bring up my characters again. All right, and then watch this, how I can now just make this go a little bit more. Is that okay? Pretty cool. I like that. Now, it's still maybe not perfect for you. And this is maybe the trickiest part of working with Type on a Path. And that's being able to move it along the path how you'd like to move it. So I'm going to go to my direct selection tool, and I want you to notice these little guys right here. There are two little what I call bookends. This is the beginning of your Type on a Path, and this is the end, believe it or not, right? And oh, that's weird. Oh, that's right, because I started off with a lot of type. So it's like, oh, it just brought that in. Now, the thing to notice, and this is incredibly important, is this, when I move my mouse right over here to the edge right there, notice how underneath my arrow, I get like a little line with a left pointing arrow. And when I move my mouse over to here, I get another one with a right facing arrow. I'm going to move this one just down a little bit because that's my end, and this is my beginning. So now if I go to here, wait for that, and then I can now move this along the path. So let's do that so you can actually see it. So you got to be sometimes actually pretty close to get to it. Try not to click on this because it'll ask you if you want to move it someplace else. Just wait for that. It's really important to wait for that, or else you get a little message. You're like, I don't want to do that at all. Okay, and now notice how I can just see where it's going to go. It's perfect. Love that. Right? And awesome. But now let's go ahead and just shrink it in a little bit more. And watch as I change the shape, the text comes with me. Okay? Very, very cool. Right? And now, just for fun, let's change the color to whatever. Okay, let's maybe just do it red. He's scary. All right. And then again, just for fun, let's put a nice little stroke around it. I'll just make that black, maybe a little bit thicker. Let's see. Zoom out a little bit. Get rid of this guy. Don't need it. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. You'll just play around with whatever you like in terms of your font and everything. The takeaway here is it is super easy to do Type on a Path and to be really creative with it. Okay. And then you don't need to actually see the shape. You just have it, zigzagging and wavy, going around in a circle, whatever kind of projects you're working on. All right. So pause the video, practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, I want to introduce you to the Appearance panel. Appearance panel is pretty incredible to give you lots of information, but also allow you to really make changes right there on the panel itself. So if I go over here to Window, you will see I have the Appearance panel, and you'll see it says No Selection. When I click on this right here, you'll notice now it has my characters that's selected, and it's telling me that I have a stroke of 2 points, and I also have a fill of a particular color. I can simply click on this, and then I can actually make a change to that thing that I have selected. Oh, great. So if I want to make this a little bit thinner, I can absolutely do that. If I want to change the color to one of my swatches, I can actually do that and actually find all my swatches right within there. I'm going to keep this as is. Okay, and the same thing with my fill. Right, so you want to kind of keep an eye on your Appearance panel, regardless of what you're actually doing, whether it's a stroke, something like that, but it could be you're working with more like graphic styles, and all kinds of other different elements. Maybe it's a gradient. So you can really see what's going on, but also control it. So let me show you one thing you might decide to do, and that is going to be maybe putting multiple strokes on something. Okay, so in order to actually do this the way that Illustrator wants me to do it, as far as adding in multiple strokes, is I have to remove the stroke and kind of start from the beginning so I can work with my appearances accordingly. So let me just delete this one right here, and you'll see that no longer do I have a stroke anymore. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this whole area just like this. I'm selecting the type itself, but I'm selecting the whole text box, if you will. Right? Now, you'll notice over here in the lower left, there is this add a new stroke and also add a new fill. And then in my advanced class, I talk about some of these effects that we can apply as well. All right, so very simply, I'm going to say add a new stroke, and that comes it. Okay, pretty cool. I've already done that before. No big deal. And maybe I'm going to make that bigger. All right, maybe this time I'll make it a different color. Okay, pretty neat. But now, what if I want to do multiple strokes?